All right, we are going on to a new lesson. This will be a bit shorter, and we're going to apply everything we learned about ratios and rates and really apply it to what we do in real life. The first one we're going to do is we're going to make pancakes. Now, in my house, we make two kinds of pancakes. Okay, we're looking at ratios, comparing. We're going to compare Swedish pancakes to traditional pancakes. And I love making Swedish pancakes because they're really light, but very buttery. They don't raise up like a traditional fluffy pancake would. But I think you'll see the difference when we show you the ratio of flour to butter. So we're going to set this up on a table, and we're going to, let's make this flour, and let's make that butter. And we'll call this Swedish pancakes, and down here we'll put traditional pancakes. All right, so when I look at my recipe, it calls for Swedish pancakes 2 cups of flour. Traditional pancakes, it says 1 cup of flour. For Swedish pancakes, it says 7 tablespoons of butter. For traditional pancakes, it says 3 tablespoons of butter. Well, which has more? Are they the same? So we need to look at this in another way to see how these two ratios match up. Well, we saw before that we could use a number line. We'll just draw one really quickly up here. And we could put flour up here and butter down here. And we could look at the ratio there. But in this case, I actually have to do this twice because I've got 2 different recipes. So whenever you see something like this, this is going to require a little bit more work than before. And this is just one way to show you work. All right, so Swedish pancakes up here and traditional pancakes down here. So traditional pancakes, the flour was at 1 and the butter was at 3. So if the flour was at 2, the butter would be at 6, and 3 and 9, etc. Okay. Swedish pancakes didn't start at 1 cup of flour. It started at 2 cups of flour, and for 2 cups of flour, it was 7. Now, if I went to 3, what would that be? Is that 8 or 14 or what happens? So to be able to figure out either how much more or just comparing the two, I need to go backwards to find my scale. So my unit rate, which is similar to scale. And so I want to go back to 1. So for 1 cup of flour, how much butter would that be? Well, 1 is half of 2, so to keep the same ratio, I would have to cut 7 in half. So what's half of 7? Well, it's 3.5. So if you want to know, well, what if there were 3 cups of flour, how much would I use? I could say, well, the difference between 3.5 and 7 is 3.5, so I have to add another 3.5, so it would be 10.5. And if I kept going with this, then I add another 3.5, that would be 14, etc. And of course down here you can see that I could do the same thing. So I could always be comparing the two by having a unit rate for flour, which is 1, and looking at it this way. Now, you notice that these were ratios that were different, and I compared them by just lining them up and looking at how they changed over how one affected the other. But let's look at another way, and this we're going to call, we're starting with unit rates, or excuse me, we're starting by both not having unit rates and having to create a situation where both of them are reduced. The other one, sometimes you don't need to reduce, and sometimes you do. When we say compare unit rates, we are assuming that you will always reduce both of your fractions so that one number in the ratio is the number 1. All right, so let's look at hamburgers. Let's say I'm going to buy a quarter pounder, and I'm going to call that 0.25 because 0.25 or 25% is the same as a quarter. And I'm going to label that, and that is weight. And then I'm going to put the price at the bottom. It costs $3.50, let's say. And then I want to compare that to a hamburger with 1/3 of a pound. So that would be 0.3 bar. And the cost of 1/3 of a pound, excuse me, that was just a little bit too messy there. Let me fix that up there before I move on. There. Okay, so that's 0.3 bar, or 0.3 bar, 1/3 of a pound, and it costs $4. So which is the better deal? You notice we did this in the last lesson, but that was just as an example. You didn't practice it in your practice set, but now you are. So how do we set this up? We want to get both of them down to a unit rate. So this is a double problem. So we're going to set up the first hamburger, the quarter pounder, looking just like we have done it before. And do we want it price per dollar or price per pound? Well, traditionally it's price per pound. And then we're going to label this. This is the pounds. This is the dollars. So we know what we're talking about. No naked numbers. We're going to cross multiply. And we're going to divide by the third number. And then you're going to tell me tomorrow what that equals. We're going to do it the second time. And this time we're going to fill it in with a different set of numbers. And you notice that the 1 remains the same because this is unit rate. We have to get them both down to a unit rate to compare them. And this is again pounds over money. And you're going to cross multiply and divide by 0.3 bar. Now, if you're using your calculator, which many of you will, you can just use 0.33 and you'll get an approximate amount. That'll be close enough for our purposes. I figured you'd rather do decimals than fractions, so you can tell me tomorrow which one was the better deal. And we'll be doing a lot more practice on types of things like that. And then we move on to a whole nother type of relationship. And that will be the second half of our chapter. So since we're now finishing the first half, you can be assured that there will be a little quiz. So make sure you practice.